Isolde Dubois and Dante grew up together. Dante was there when she had nothing, and he stayed by her side as she built an empire worth hundreds of millions. They were in love for 10 solid years. Dante had a wedding dress custom-made to Isolde's exact specifications, placed the winning bid on a flawless diamond ring, and planned the kind of epic proposal you see in movies. But when the moment came, she just curled her lip, her voice dripping with contempt. "I'm just not feeling it anymore," she'd said. "The younger guys have so much more energy." Heartbroken, Dante told her it was over. She assumed he was just throwing a tantrum. He even heard she made a bet with her best friend, Anya. "Give him a week," Isolde had boasted. "He'll be on his knees begging me to take him back." But months went by, and Dante never broke. Panicked, she finally swallowed her pride and tried to make things right. "Where are you?" she asked when she finally got a hold of him. "I want to propose to you." But it wasn't Dante who answered the phone. It was a woman with a cool, commanding voice. "He's busy, don't bother him." In the background, Isolde could hear the unmistakable sounds of two people lost in pleasure. She completely lost it. "What are you two doing?" The woman's reply was a purr of confirmation, exactly what it sounds like. 10 years. That's how long Isolde and Dante had been together. Dante was going to propose on their anniversary, and he'd spent a solid month orchestrating a moment she would never forget. A helicopter circled over the scenic overlook in the Austin Hills, showering the clearing with rose petals. On the massive screens he'd rented, a video montage he'd painstakingly edited played out the story of their love. Dante walked toward her, his heart pounding, and dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box with the auction one diamond from his pocket. "Isolde," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I love you. Will you marry me?" He expected her to throw her arms around him, to cover his face in kisses. Instead, the proposal he hoped would be unforgettable became a humiliation he'd never lived down. Her face was a mask of impatience. There was none of the joy he'd envisioned. Her friends standing off to the side were practically vibrating with excitement. "Isolde, say yes," one of them urged. But she just turned and walked away, a voice memo playing from her phone. "Isolde, baby, I miss you. Can you come see me?" A chill went through Dante. It was a man's voice, slick and predatory. People had warned him for months that Isolde had been getting cozy with a string of pretty boys. He should watch his back, they'd said. He'd asked her about it, but she'd dismissed his questions with contempt. Now the truth was undeniable. "Dante, let's do this some other time," she said over her shoulder. "I have to go look at an important contract." He grabbed her arm, his eyes pleading. "I'm serious about this, Isolde. Everyone is watching. It'll only take a minute. Are you really going to leave?" He'd admit it. He had loved her to the point of losing himself. He had been happy to do it, but this public rejection, this slap in the face in front of everyone they knew, what was I supposed to do? "Don't make a scene, Dante," she snapped, her voice low. "The company is more important. We'll have other chances." "It's just a few minutes," he insisted, his voice cracking. "Is what they're saying about you true?" He stood in her way, desperate for an answer. She didn't say another word. She just pushed past him and strode toward her car. A hush fell over their friends, their eyes now filled with pity. Dante just stood there, head bowed, a dull ache spreading through his chest. She had changed. She was ready to throw it all away. They were childhood sweethearts, 10 years together, and in one afternoon, his heart had been shattered into a million pieces. He didn't know how long he stood there. Eventually, only his best friend, Leo, remained, his hand resting uncomfortably on Dante's shoulder. "Dante, I heard she went to that new members-only club downtown. Maybe you should go talk to her. Maybe it's all just a big misunderstanding." Dante walked into the club and went straight to the private suite he knew she'd booked. The door was slightly ajar. He didn't have to go in. He could hear everything perfectly. There was no contract meeting. It was just her and her circle of friends, along with a few guys he didn't recognize. Through the crack in the door, he watched as Isolde kissed one of them, long and deep. Anya, her best friend, looked uneasy. "Isolde, don't you think this is a bit much? Dante just proposed to you. You didn't say yes, but you didn't exactly say no either, and now you're all over this guy. Aren't you worried about what he'll think?" Isolde scoffed and took a sip of her champagne. "He proposed? That's his business," she said, her voice lazy and dismissive. "Whether I accept is my choice. 10 years together. Honestly, I'm so sick of him." A few of her friends chimed in with sycophantic laughter. Exactly. She gave him 10 years. He should be grateful. What's some boring, middle-aged guy compared to a hot young thing? But Dante is so handsome, another girl countered. I have such a crush on him. Isolde, you're just spoiled for choice, and Dante is a genius. He makes so much money. Yeah, seriously, Dante's a great guy, someone else added. And he's totally devoted to you. Don't you feel bad hurting him like this? Isolde shot her a look that could freeze fire. How can I feel bad when I'm completely bored? If you guys like him so much, go for it. Who wants used goods anyway? The conversation that followed was a blur of crude jokes and cruel laughter, all at his expense. Listening to it, Dante's heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. He wanted to storm in there, to demand an explanation, but then a cold clarity washed over him. He turned around and walked away without a word. Back at their penthouse, he started packing his things. He packed until the tears blurred his vision, and then he must have fallen asleep on the floor. He woke up to the sound of Isolde walking in. Her familiar perfume was mixed with the scent of a man's cologne. Maybe she felt a sliver of guilt for humiliating him, because she walked over and tried to wrap her arms around him. He pushed her away. The shock on her face was absolute. In 10 years, he had never once denied her anything. Her expression hardened, shifting from surprise to anger. He ignored it, just staring at her, trying to burn the image of her cold, merciless face into his memory. We're breaking up, he said, his voice a raw whisper. Inside, he felt something shatter, the last fragile piece of his youthful idealism. He thought he was ready for this, that he had already let go, but in that moment he realized letting go was never going to be easy. The pain was excruciating, but he told himself it was better to rip the bandage off now. Isolde was stunned. She clearly thought this was just another one of his moods. What are you talking about? She said, a bitter, mocking laugh escaping her lips. It was a laugh that held a strange mix of anger and, he thought, relief. Dante, you better think carefully, because if you say that again, there's no coming back. You could beg me, and it wouldn't matter. He looked her straight in the eye, his gaze as steady and serious as it had been when he was on one knee. I said we're breaking up. I'm completely serious, and I will never come back and beg you for anything. She fell silent, her eyes filled with a complicated storm of emotions. Is this about the engagement? Yes. Isn't that enough? Dante, stop being so childish. I just wasn't ready. He couldn't listen to any more lies. He cut her off. I've already decided. There's nothing to explain. This isn't a negotiation. It's a notification. She stared at him, her expression shifting as if she were seeing a stranger. Then she stood up and slapped him across the face. Dante Rossi, you take that back right now, she hissed, or we have no future. He touched his cheek, which was already starting to sting. It was the first time she'd ever hit him. The physical pain was a dull throb compared to the agony in his chest. I can't take it back, he said softly. We haven't had a future for a long time. He straightened up, his voice turning cold and formal. If that's all, Ms. Dubois, I'll have to ask you to leave. My lawyer will be in touch to discuss the rest. Her face twisted with rage. You'll regret this, Dante. I'll be waiting for the day you come crying back to me. She turned and slammed the door behind her. Dante owned a significant stake in Isolde's company. He wasn't involved in the day-to-day, but his early contributions were a cornerstone of its success. Dividing the equity was too messy for them to handle alone. It was a job for the professionals. For now, Dante just needed to get away. There was nothing left for him in this city. He called his lawyer and gave him full authority to handle the separation of their assets. The moment he hung up, a notification popped up on his phone. Anya had sent him a video from an Instagram story. It was from last night, the caption celebrating freedom. In the video, one of Isolde's boy toys was laughing. So, Isolde, how many days do you give your loser ex-boyfriend before he caves? He asked. He always comes crawling back with his tail between his legs. I'll give him 3 days, someone else piped up. Dante seemed really pissed this time. You really embarrassed him. Yeah, Isolde, another voice added. In front of all his friends? That was brutal. Isolde just smirked, looking utterly unimpressed. A week tops. If he takes any longer, I won't say yes, even if he proposes again. Her friends roared with laughter as someone popped a bottle of champagne. Isolde's totally gonna win this bet. Dante can't live without you. He's the ultimate simp. A bitter smile twisted Dante's lips. He didn't need a mirror to know how ugly it was. He knew Isolde had made sure this video got to him. It was a warning shot, a command to get back in line. But after everything he'd heard her say, how could he ever go back? There was no way back. He went to the closet and took out the wedding dress he'd had made for her. He ran his hand over the delicate fabric one last time. He had designed it himself, incorporating every detail he knew she loved. It had taken 6 months to create. Now it was useless. It would never have its bride. He picked up a pair of shears and began to cut. He sliced the beautiful gown into dozens of pieces, fragments that could never be put back together again, just like their relationship. Then he took off the ring he wore, a gift from her years ago, and gathered every other present she had ever given him. These were their memories. He would leave them all behind, taking nothing with him. He sat down, picked up a pen, and wrote a letter. It was for Isolde. Maybe one day she would read it. A day later, Dante landed in New York City. He got a college degree here, and a lot of his old friends still lived in the city. It seemed like a good place to disappear for a while. When they heard he was back in town, they insisted on throwing a reunion of sorts. They hadn't seen each other in years, but their energy was infectious. They were in the middle of a loud, drunken round of toasts when the door to their private room swung open. A few of his friends' jaws dropped. Whoa, who is that? Dante glanced over and saw a woman who looked vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place her. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Who she was didn't matter to him. She had probably just walked into the wrong room. But then she started walking directly toward him. Dante Rossi, you're back in the city and you didn't even think to call? Am I that easy to forget? He looked in her bright, piercing eyes, and a memory clicked in place. Evelyn Shun, is that you? Hearing him say her name, everyone at the table froze. Evelyn Shun was the untouchable heiress of one of New York's most powerful families. She'd been a year ahead of them in college, a campus legend with her stunning, icy beauty and formidable background. She had a legion of admirers, but she never gave any of them the time of day. Then, in his sophomore year, she'd suddenly transferred to a school abroad and vanished from their lives, eventually becoming a distant memory. Seeing her now, Dante was stunned. They had met by chance in a library once. It was a brief, polite exchange, nothing more than a nodding acquaintance. Isolde had been jealous for weeks after that, and it had taken all his effort to reassure her. He couldn't believe this woman even remembered him, let alone sought him out. His friends snapped out of their shock and scrambled to offer her a seat. She waved them off and slid into the empty chair right next to him. Well, this is an honor, Evelyn, one of his friends joked nervously. I remember guys who would have sold their souls to have dinner with you, and you wouldn't even look at them. Dante must have some serious pull. Everyone laughed, careful not to push the joke too far. You didn't mess with the Chin family. Several of the guys at the table actually worked for companies under their corporate umbrella. They knew better than to be anything but respectful. You're all too kind, Evelyn said, her voice smooth as silk. I just heard Dante was in town and wanted to stop by and say hello. Please don't let me interrupt. She was effortlessly charming, and his friends, eager to curry favor, quickly brought the party's energy back up. Dante was the only one who couldn't relax. This woman's intentions were crystal clear, but they barely knew each other. Dante, she said, turning to him with a playful glint in her eye. What's wrong? You don't look happy to see me. He quickly shook his head. Of course not. It's great to see you, Evelyn. I'm just surprised. As he fumbled for something to say, the friend next to him leaned in. Evelyn, you don't know the half of it. Dante's been gone for years. He just got out of a bad breakup and came back here to get his head straight. Tonight's party is to celebrate his freedom. When she heard he was single, a flicker of something, a bright, intense light, flashed in Evelyn's eyes before disappearing. If he hadn't been watching her so closely, he would have missed it. To break the awkward silence, he raised his glass to her. She met his gaze over the rim of her own. His friend nudged him discreetly. Dude, what's the deal with you and Chun? She's definitely here for you. Dante looked at the woman who was now laughing and chatting with his friends as if she'd known them for years. She was wearing an impeccably tailored blazer, her long legs sheathed in silk stockings, but behind the confident smile, he saw a hint of exhaustion in her eyes. He stared a little too long before he caught himself. What relationship? He muttered back. I'm just a regular guy. Getting a second glance from someone like her is a gift. Don't go getting ideas. His friend wasn't convinced. No way, man. I saw that look in her eyes. It's not nothing. I'm gonna find out. Before Dante could stop him, the jerk had already called out across the table. Evelyn, we've all got places to be soon, but Dante's had a bit too much to drink. Would it be too much trouble for you to arrange a car to get him home safely? Dante wanted to strangle him. Evelyn Chun, an untouchable NYC socialite. Did they want to read a headline tomorrow about some drunk idiot who accidentally fell into the Hudson River? He shot to his feet. I'm fine, really. Please don't trouble yourself, Evelyn. But Evelyn didn't give him a chance to refuse. Of course, she said, a slow, knowing smile spreading across her face. It's no trouble at all. It's been years, Dante. I missed you. That smile sent a shiver down his spine. Maybe he was going to be in the news tomorrow after all. Evelyn was as good as her word. She grabbed his hand and started pulling him out of the restaurant. He'd had a few drinks, but he was far from drunk. He tried to protest, but she just pushed him into the back of a sleek black car waiting at the curb. If you don't want to make headlines tomorrow, you'll do as you're told, she whispered, her voice a low threat. Okay, so it was a threat. Dante just hoped the headlines she was thinking of weren't the same ones he was imagining. The entire ride, she was practically glowing, smiling at him in a way that had him genuinely terrified. When the car pulled up to his hotel, he thanked her and prepared to make a run for it, but she grabbed his arm. He turned back, and suddenly the atmosphere was charged. They were standing incredibly close. All he had to do was lean forward an inch to kiss her full, red lips, but he didn't dare. Dante, are you really that heartless? She murmured, her voice a low purr. We haven't seen each other in years. I brought you all the way back to your hotel. Aren't you going to invite me up for a drink? He understood exactly what she was implying, and he was in no position to refuse. Her tone was a suggestion, but her eyes made it clear it was an order. Okay. The moment the elevator doors closed, Evelyn threw her arms around his neck and kissed him, deep and demanding. The alcohol must have hit him harder than he thought, because as soon as he felt the softness of her lips, his defenses crumbled. She was tall, not petite like Isolde, standing only half a head shorter than him. She was incredibly assertive, her hands gripping the front of his shirt as she kissed him again and again. As he wrapped his arms around her slim waist, he found himself surrendering to her dominance. Was this what it felt like to be completely overwhelmed? When they reached his hotel room door, she draped herself around his neck. Dante, she whispered against his ear, carry me inside. At that moment, no matter how much he wanted her, her identity crashed back into his mind. Evelyn, please let me go, he pleaded. We can't do this. She grabbed his face and turned his head toward the corner of the hallway ceiling, right where a security camera was blinking. This is evidence of you assaulting me, she said, her voice dropping to a husky whisper. If you don't do what I say, you're finished. He wanted to cry, but there was no time to think. He swept her up into his arms. The second they were inside, he tossed her onto the bed. Evelyn, you're the one who chose this, he said, his voice rough. You could still back out. She didn't flinch. She just rolled over and straddled him, her eyes blazing. She fumbled with his shirt for a moment before letting out a frustrated sigh. You do it, she huffed. I don't know how. The alcohol, the raw emotion, it all took over. He lunged at her. She cried out, her voice a mix of pain and pleasure, but she wouldn't let him stop. They spent the entire night wrapped around each other, finally falling into an exhausted sleep as the first light of dawn broke through the window. When Dante woke up, the alcohol had worn off. He saw Evelyn sleeping peacefully beside him, and a wave of pure terror washed over him. A small, satisfied smile played on her lips. On the pristine white sheets, there was a small, dark red stain. His mind went completely blank. He remembered flashes of the night before, and he wanted to punch himself in the face. This cool, sophisticated woman, it had been her first time. He was mentally preparing himself for prison. What the hell had he done? You're awake. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. Her voice was hoarse from crying out last night. Do you have any idea what you've done? Dante couldn't meet her gaze. He was drowning in guilt. So, you slept with me, and now you're not going to take responsibility? She teased. He looked at her, at the playful smirk in her eyes, and he felt like he was going to be sick. Evelyn, just tell me, he begged. What will it take for you to forgive me? She shrugged casually, getting out of bed and starting to dress right in front of him. Don't even think about being that kind of guy. Get dressed. We're leaving. As Dante pulled on his clothes, he asked cautiously, "Where are we going?" "City Hall," she said brightly. "Or, if you prefer, the police station." He was such an idiot. Why did he drink so much last night? His face was a mask of desperation. "Evelyn, I'm not good enough for you," he pleaded. "Please just let me go." She walked over, a triumphant look on her face, and hooked a finger under his chin. "Dante, my family is pushing me into an arranged marriage. I have no choice. So here's the deal. You come with me to City Hall right now. If you agree, we can get a divorce in a year. If you don't, I'll personally escort you to the nearest precinct." She leaned in closer. "You should choose carefully. Option B doesn't just mean a few years in prison. Besides," she purred, "am I really that scary? Where's all that courage you had last night?" "You weren't saying this then." A cold dread washed over him, afraid of what other stupid things he might have said. "Evelyn, what did I say last night?" She looked at him, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Oh, quite a lot. I seem to recall you promising to teach me a lesson, something about making sure I couldn't get out of bed. And there was definitely a part where you swore to cherish me for the rest of your life." Dante glanced at her smooth, porcelain skin and felt a familiar stirring. "I'll choose City Hall," he mumbled. "But Evelyn, why me?" Hearing him finally surrender, she beamed, but instead of answering his question, she wrapped her arms around his neck, and he could feel her warm breath on his skin. He knew she was teasing him, but he was past the point of resisting. "My dear Evelyn," he sighed, "I just hope you don't regret this." She didn't miss a beat. "Darling husband, I'm worried you're the one who's going to have regrets." A few hours later, Dante walked out of City Hall with a marriage certificate in his hand, his mind still reeling. He had somehow gotten married, just like that. He spent the next couple of weeks with Evelyn Chun. Then he got a text from Isolde's friend, Anya. "Dante, when are you coming back? Everyone misses you." It was obviously another attempt to get Isolde and him back together. He thought for a moment before replying. "I have some things to take care of here. I'm not sure when I'll be back." A few minutes passed before another message came through. "The holidays are coming up. We always get together for Christmas. You haven't forgotten, have you? I won't make it this year. You guys have fun. I'll send presents." After that, he put his phone away. Back in Austin, at a high-end restaurant, Anya showed her phone to a hopeful-looking Isolde. "Isolde, you should just apologize to Dante," Anya urged. "You know you were wrong. It was a really humiliating thing to do to him," she added. "If you just swallow your pride, I know he'll come back. He loves you so much." Isolde's face darkened, and she slammed her wine glass down on the table. "Don't talk about him again. Who's he think he is? It's not like I'm short on men." Her other friends quickly tried to placate her. "Isolde, don't be angry. Dante's just trying to make a point. Honestly, you went too far this time." "Exactly. He planned that whole proposal, and you just shot him down with no regard for his feelings. Just say you're sorry. Maybe plan a new proposal for him. He'll come around." The words were like needles, and Isolde's composure finally snapped. "Why should I apologize to him? For all these years, he's always been the one apologizing to me. Why can't he be the one to come begging for my forgiveness?" Her friends exchanged nervous glances, no one daring to speak after her outburst. Isolde looked around at them, her eyes cold. "From now on, none of you are to contact him. If you do, don't blame me for what happens next." As she finished speaking, she gripped the edge of the table, a violent cough racking her body. She spat a mouthful of blood onto the white tablecloth and collapsed. "Oh my God! Call!" Anya screamed, rushing to her side. "Isolde, you're so foolish. This never happened when Dante was around to take care of you. Why are you torturing yourself like this?" When Isolde woke up, she was staring at the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. A bitter resentment filled her heart. She remembered now how Dante used to fuss over her, terrified that her demanding job would ruin her health. He was always there, making sure she ate, making sure she rested well. How had that stopped? She vaguely recalled snapping at him one day, telling him to stop hovering over her all the time. Tears welled in Isolde's eyes. All she wanted right now was for Dante to walk through the door with a bowl of hot soup. She reached for her phone, then remembered, in a fit of pique, she had deleted his number and blocked him on every platform. She cried silently. It was strange and unsettling not to have anyone taking care of her, but still, her stubborn pride won out. She put the phone back down, even though she knew his number by heart, a number she would never forget. "You won't break me, Dante," she whispered to the empty room. I'm a CEO. I'll make you come back and beg me. Dante knew nothing about any of this. Honey, time to wake up. Come and try what I made. Evelyn's gentle voice drifted from the kitchen, pulling Dante's gaze away from the city skyline. Her legs were really nice. She had insisted Dante move into her sprawling Upper East Side penthouse. According to her, they were a married couple, and married couples were supposed to live together. She hadn't been going into the office much either. Instead, she spent her days dragging Dante through every corner of the city, exploring hidden cafes and quiet parks. He had resigned himself to his fate. They'd done everything a married couple does, and then some. At first, he had resisted, but she would just laugh, pin him down on the bed, and flash a devilish smile. You're my husband. Isn't it normal for a husband and wife to do wifely and husbandly things? Dante was starting to realize that the whole forced marriage story was probably a fabrication. He didn't know her real reasons, but he was certain she had genuine feelings for him. There's a light in her eyes when she looked at him, the same light he used to have when he looked at Isolde. To be honest, he was a mess. A decade of love with Isolde had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. All that effort, all that devotion, eroded by time. Could he really build something new with Evelyn? The gap between their worlds was a massive chasm. He had to admit, he was deeply, deeply wounded. He was terrified of letting anyone in again. He wanted to lock his heart away in a dark room and hide from the world. When he walked into the kitchen, she looked up at him, her face bright with a smile. She was truly beautiful. This heiress who had probably never had to lift a finger in her life was cooking for him. It felt like an incredible gift. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. She leaned back against his chest. It might not be very good, she said softly. Please don't hate it. Dante smiled into her hair. How could I? Anything you make will be the best thing I've ever tasted. It was strange watching her at the stove. A tiny flicker of affection ignited in his heart. Maybe it was just an illusion. Isolde had rarely ever cooked for him. We'd always had a private chef. I'd rather spend that time focusing on a company than learning my way around a kitchen, she used to say. After that, he never asked her to cook with him again. Evelyn had made steak, but it was a little charred. She looked embarrassed as she set the plate down in front of him. Dante smiled gently and reached out to wipe a smudge of soot from her cheek. She let out a small shriek and bolted for the bathroom. He chuckled and, without thinking, pulled her plate toward him and started to cut the steak for her. It was just a habit, one he'd developed over years of being with Isolde. When Evelyn returned, she stopped short, surprised. It was only then that Dante realized he might have overstepped. Oh, sorry, Dante said quickly. I saw you weren't back, so I just cut it for you. If you don't want it, you can have mine. He looked at her sheepishly. Rumor had it that Evelyn hated other people touching her things. He felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. She'd worked so hard to make this meal, and the last thing he wanted was to upset her. You idiot, she said softly, a warm smile spreading across her face. I love it. She leaned over and gave him a quick, gentle kiss. Then she picked up her fork and started cutting his steak for him. Dante realized then how much she truly cared about him. The easy intimacy between them was something only found between two people whose hearts are in sync. Watching her gentle, focused movements, a warmth spread through his chest. He thought of Isolde. For all those years, it had always been him giving, him doing, him anticipating her needs. She took it all for granted, rarely considering his feelings. It was as if he was born to serve her, whether it was a crisis at the company or a minor inconvenience at home. He had to be there at her beck and call. If he wasn't, she'd lose her temper. Now, for the first time in a long time, Dante was feeling what it was like to be cherished. If his feelings weren't deceiving him, in that moment, the door to his heart swung wide open for Evelyn Chun. He wanted nothing more than to spend the rest of his life like this, in this simple, intimate bubble with her. But then he remembered they were only supposed to be husband and wife for a year. Evelyn, this doesn't seem like your usual style, Dante teased. Have you had a personality transplant in the years we've been apart? She stopped what she was doing and looked at him, her expression suddenly serious. No, but I like you. Anyone else who tried that would have their legs broken. Yep, there was the arrogant heiress he remembered, but hearing her say, I like you, sent a jolt through him that he struggled to conceal. To hide his reaction, he quickly picked up his wine glass. Was this really the cold, aloof woman from his college memories? She seemed more like a wildfire. He scrambled to change the subject. After we eat, do you want to go see a movie? She looked at him, puzzled, as if she couldn't understand why he'd suddenly suggest that. I just feel like we're moving really fast, Dante explained quietly. Maybe we should work on building a connection, even if it's only for a year. I don't want you to end up hating me. She froze for a second, a faint blush rising on her cheeks, but her tone was still fierce when she spoke. We can go to the movies, she said. But whether we get divorced after a year is my decision, not yours. You're not allowed to bring it up again. Her sudden flash of anger confused him. Wasn't the one-year deal her idea in the first place? Evelyn must have realized how harsh she sounded. She stuck out her tongue and looked at him with a hint of pleading in her eyes. Do we have to get a divorce? She asked, her voice small. Dante fell silent. Honestly, after spending these past few weeks with her, the icy walls around his heart had already started to melt. She was passionate, beautiful. It would be a lie to say he wasn't falling for her. Evelyn, I think I'm starting to like you too, Dante admitted. But you know I just got out of a really painful relationship, and besides, I'm just a regular guy. He didn't finish the sentence, but she knew what he meant. She reached out and placed her fingers on his lips, silencing him. She stared at him with those big, beautiful eyes, which looked like they were about to fill with tears. He knew she was putting on an act, but he couldn't help but surrender. No divorce, he said, his voice softening. As long as you'll have me, I'll never leave you. Okay. A brilliant smile broke out on her face. She reached up and pinched his cheek. The feeling of being teased by this formidable woman made his ears turn bright red. My dear husband, why are your ears so red? She purred. It's not like we haven't been completely honest with each other before. Don't you worry. I'm not going to get rid of you. Dante had to ask himself, was this a powerful CEO, a cool and collected heiress, or was she just a beautiful, beautiful menace? They never made it to the movies. Evelyn cornered him in the bedroom. With a sigh of resignation, he decided to play along. My dearest wife, shall we go investigate whether cats can actually do backflips? She licked her lips, her voice a seductive whisper. Oh, yes, and I want you to give me a personal demonstration. Before he could react, she had pushed him onto the bed. She really was a woman of many talents. As her perfectly manicured nails traced a line down his chest, and her lips met his, Dante admitted defeat. He was completely, utterly lost. Isolde Dubois was finally truly banished from his heart. Dante, Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling slightly, look at me. I want you to love me. Her vulnerability sent a pang through his heart. A 10-year relationship with his first love had ended with her casting him aside. Yet this powerful heiress treated him like a priceless treasure. She must have sensed the shift in his mood. Don't think too much, Dante, she murmured against his skin. Just remember that I will never ever betray you. They tangled together, their lovemaking fierce and passionate. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, Evelyn traced lazy circles on his chest with her cool fingertips. Who makes you happier? She asked softly. Me or Isolde Dubois? It was a trap, and he knew it. How was he supposed to answer that? She propped herself up on her elbow, her eyes locking onto his, not allowing him to look away. Tell me, she insisted. Or are you still thinking about that woman? They were far past the point of games. Dante pulled her down and kissed her until they were both breathless. Only you, he said finally, his voice thick. You're the only source of my happiness. Good, she whispered, kissing him back, because I'm going to make you happy for the rest of your life. The holiday season felt cold and empty this year. At the annual Christmas party his old friends threw, the guests all wore polite smiles, but none of them held the genuine, unreserved warmth of years past. His gift had arrived in Austin. He'd sent one to everyone in their old circle, everyone except Isolde. Isolde watched with a cold expression as her friends squealed with delight over their presents. She clutched a glass of whiskey, a drink she hadn't touched in years. The gifts were thoughtful, all picked out by Evelyn. The most striking item was a small bottle of perfume from a brand Isolde adored. She frowned, her eyes fixated on the bottle. Anya noticed her expression and quickly handed it to her. Isolde took a sniff. It was a beautiful, sophisticated scent, but her face grew darker and darker. Crash! She hurled the bottle against the wall. Then, in a fit of rage, she swept everything off the table. The force of the motion sent her stumbling, and she fell, her leg catching the edge of the broken glass. A deep gash opened on her shin. Her friends gasped in shock. Anya rushed to help her up, intending to take her to the hospital, but Isolde shoved her away. Isolde, you're bleeding. We need to get you to an emergency room. But Isolde just stood there, her face pale and defiant. Dante would never buy this stuff, she said, her voice a raw, desperate rasp. The only perfume he ever liked was gardenia. Her friends tried to comfort her. Isolde, don't be upset. You probably just bought these in a rush. I'm sure your gift is something unique. Yeah, he probably had your scent in the house. Don't be mad. He's just trying to apologize with gifts. Isolde, just be patient. You know he loves you more than anything. Isolde snatched the bottle of whiskey and took a long, hard swallow. He's a bastard, she choked out. He doesn't love me at all. It's been almost a month, and he hasn't even called. Her friends fell silent. It was Anya who finally broke the tension. Isolde, don't worry, I'll FaceTime him right now, she said, pulling out her phone. Just try to keep your cool, okay? Before Isolde could object, the call was already ringing. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each ring a new form of torture. Just as Isolde was about to give up hope, the call connected. Dante had just finished a session of vigorous exercise with Evelyn and was feeling pleasantly exhausted. Anya, hey. Merry Christmas, what's up? Across the screen, he could see Isolde's face. She looked devastated. She recognized the post-coital flush on his face. She'd seen it enough times to know. Dante, Anya said, her voice strained. She kept darting her eyes to the side, trying to get him to notice Isolde standing beside her. Did you forget something? He saw Isolde perfectly, but he pretended he didn't. Anya, are you sick? Your eyes are twitching. Do you need me to call someone to take you to the hospital? Anya looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Dante, it's Isolde, she said, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. She's hurt. He saw Isolde's face getting paler, her body starting to tremble. Can you please come back and see her? She really misses you, she pleaded. At those words, a flicker of hope ignited in Isolde's eyes. Dante, she said, her voice barely a whisper, come home. What happened before, it was my fault, okay? Her friends stared in disbelief. The notoriously formidable CEO had never sounded so pitiful. Even when she apologized in the past, she had always managed to maintain an air of authority. Dante feigned ignorance. Isolde and I broke up. He said, his tone flat. It's not my place to take care of her anymore. Anya tried one last time, convinced he was just being stubborn after all the years he had been crazy about Isolde. Dante, stop playing games. There's a limit to this. You and Isolde have been together for so long. It would be a shame to throw it all away. He didn't bother replying. He just ended the call. On the other side of the country, Isolde completely fell apart. She snatched the phone, its screen now black, and smashed it on the floor again and again until it was nothing but a pile of broken components. Her friends didn't dare breathe. They had heard every word. Overwhelmed, Isolde's eyes rolled back in her head, and she fainted. As Anya rushed to catch her, she saw a single tear trace a path down Isolde's cheek. After hanging up, Dante went out to the balcony and lit a cigarette. Evelyn came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Dante, she began, her voice hesitant. Are you still thinking about her? He patted her hand and turned to face her, pulling her into his arms. No, he said firmly. It's over between us. There's no going back. Hearing that, Evelyn melted into his embrace. He could feel the tension leave her body. Dante, you know I've been in love with you for a very long time, she confessed, her voice muffled against his chest. You're mine now, and I'm never ever going to let you go. She pulled back slightly to look at him. That one-year agreement? I made it up. I was afraid you wouldn't agree to marry me otherwise. She looked embarrassed to admit it, but she forced herself to continue. Dante reached up and gently stroked her cheek. He had sensed her feelings for him for a while now, but he still couldn't understand why. It couldn't have just been because he let her have a seat in the library all those years ago. The story of how they met seemed more absurd every time he thought about it. Evelyn, can you tell me? He asked. I remember meeting you for the first time in the library 10 years ago. He tried to lighten the mood. Was I just so handsome you fell in love at first sight? His teasing made her blush. She gave his side a sharp pinch. Dante, the first time we met wasn't 10 years ago, she said seriously. It was 13 years ago. Do you remember now? He was completely baffled. 13 years ago? How is that possible, Evelyn? You must be mistaken. We were just kids then. I have no memory of that. She punched his chest lightly. You jerk. How could I be mistaken? I've been quietly watching you for 13 years. How many 13 years does a person get in their life? This only confused him more. How could this New York heiress have known him for that long? He wasn't even from the city. Dante, I know this is hard to believe, but just listen. 13 years ago, you saved a girl from drowning in a reservoir. Do you remember? A long, buried memory slowly surfaced. He was right. It was the summer after he finished middle school. He was out with his friends near the old reservoir. They saw a girl struggling in the water. Without a second thought, he jumped in and pulled her out. He carried her down the hill, but before he could even ask her name, a group of men in black suits appeared and whisked her away. Later, they came to his family's house to thank them, leaving behind a significant amount of money. You that girl. Evelyn bit his lip hard enough to draw a drop of blood. The metallic taste spread through his mouth. You idiot, she whispered. Of course it was me. Why else would I know everything about you? He was still trying to process it. So the library, that was me too, she admitted. I arranged it. I figured you were in college by then, old enough to handle me confessing my feelings. I created a chance encounter, but I ran into a brick wall. He scratched his head. To be honest, he was kind of glad he'd been a brick wall back then. Her army of admirers would have torn him to shreds. But you went abroad so suddenly, he said, his own curiosity now fully ignited. His mind filled with dramatic scenarios of a rich girl running away for love, of disapproving parents tearing young lovers apart. Evelyn must have known what he was thinking, because she pinched him again, harder this time. Ow, he yelped, begging for mercy. Stop letting your imagination run wild, she scolded. After we met again, I was planning to tell you how I felt, but then I saw you confessing your feelings to Isolde Dubois. I was so heartbroken that I decided to go abroad to study, she continued. But I never stopped paying attention to you. I took over my family's business, but I always kept tabs on you. When I heard you and Isolde were fighting, and that you'd come to New York, I knew it was my chance. And don't worry, she added, my parents approve. You don't really think I could just get married without their blessing, do you? He pulled her into the tightest hug he could manage. There was nothing left to say. He would spend the rest of his life loving this woman. Evelyn, I'm so sorry, he whispered. You've waited so long. Please let me take care of you for the rest of our lives. In that moment, a passionate kiss was the only answer they needed. In Austin, Isolde woke up from another nightmare. She had dreamed that Dante was gone for good. She looked at the empty space beside her in the bed and began to sob, burying her face in her hands. There was a time when she had desperately wanted Dante to propose, but when the day finally came, she had thrown it away. She had convinced herself that after a decade-long marathon, she didn't need him anymore. She had even grown to resent his constant concern for her, wishing he would just leave her alone. But now that he was truly gone, why did it hurt so much? Was this just one of his manipulative games to win her back? No, that didn't make sense. He loved her too much for that. How could he go for weeks without contacting her? She had unblocked his number days ago. She was just waiting for him to give her an excuse, any excuse, and she would have gladly swallowed her pride. Wait, Dante must have found something out. She threw on her clothes and drove like a maniac to the home they had once shared. Isolde, who was always so composed, was now a complete mess. She got into the car Dante used to drive and, with trembling hands, accessed the dashcam footage. What she saw felt like being plunged into ice water. Dante had followed her to the club that night. How much did he know? Ignoring the late hour, she sped to the club, running more than a dozen red lights. As a VIP member, she was quickly granted access to the security recordings. Isolde collapsed to the floor. There, on the screen, was the image of Dante standing outside the private suite. She saw him stagger, his hand reaching out to brace himself against the wall. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. Tears streamed down her face. He knew everything. I didn't mean it, she whispered to the empty security office. I just didn't want to look weak in front of my friends. I wasn't ready to get married. Dante, come back. In a day, Isolde returned to the home that she and Dante had shared, or rather, the home that had once been theirs. She hadn't been back a long time. In the months leading up to the breakup, she had used work as an excuse to stay in one of her other properties. the same places she had carried on her flings with younger men. But those were just houses, they weren't a home. Isolde slapped herself across the face hard. She hated herself. She hated her selfishness, hated that she had cheated, hated that she hadn't come back sooner. Most of all, she hated that she had lost the one man whose eyes had only ever been for her. On the dining room table, she found the engagement ring he had offered her, sitting next to a box containing every gift she had ever given him. Even the jar of origami stars she had folded for him in college was there. The only thing missing was the recipient of those gifts. When Dante's lawyer had contacted her about dividing the company's shares, she had scoffed, thinking it was just another one of his dramatic ploys. But now, seeing the shredded remains of the custom-made wedding dress on the floor, a physical pain shot through her. She knew how much Dante had loved her, how desperately he had wanted to marry her, and she had been the one to destroy it all. Now she was truly scared. She was terrified that Dante was done with her for good. She couldn't live without him. He was her anchor. No matter how tired she was, no matter how badly she had been hurt, Dante was always there, quietly supporting her, listening to her, guiding her. He was her life. In a day since their breakup, she had dismissed all the boy toys. How could they possibly compare to her Dante? She picked up the letter he had left and opened it with trembling hands. The first line read, "Our story is over. We will never see each other again." The words, "never see each other again," felt like a knife twisting in her heart. She read on. The letter recounted countless small moments from their 10 years together, transporting her back to the innocent love they had shared in college. The last line of the letter was a final, devastating blow. Someone who betrays a true heart deserves neither love nor happiness. Isolde whispered the words to herself. He's right. I betrayed him. I don't deserve the happiness that should have been mine. After a long time, she staggered to her feet. No, Dante, she vowed. I'm going to find you. This time, I'll be the one to pursue you, to take care of you, to comfort you. I'm going to give you back all the love you gave me, doubled. With a shaking hand, Isolde dialed the number that was etched into her soul. Miraculously, he picked up. Her voice was thick with tears. Dante, where are you? I want to propose to you. But the sound that answered her wasn't his voice. It was a sound she knew all too well, an intimate, rhythmic noise that made her stomach clench. She swallowed her pride and forced her voice to be gentle. Dante, where are you? Let me come and pick you up, okay? We can go home this time. A woman's voice answered, cool and collected. He's busy. Don't bother him. In the background, the sounds of pleasure continued, painting a vivid picture in Isolde's mind. She completely lost it. What are you two doing? The woman's sultry laugh was the final stab to Isolde's heart. Exactly what it sounds like. The line went dead. Isolde sank to the floor, the phone still clutched in her hand. She didn't know when the call had ended. She just sat there on the cold floor, staring into space until the sun came up. She called every friend Dante had. She reached out to every contact she could think of. Finally, she found out where he was. By the time she tracked him down, Dante was preparing to propose to Evelyn. He was wearing a suit she had picked out for him, tailored to perfection. Evelyn was radiant in a simple, elegant white dress. Just as Dante dropped to one knee and pulled out the ring, Isolde burst into the room. No, you can't do this. Dante is mine. She stumbled toward him and fell to her knees at his feet. Then she started slapping herself, hard, her beautiful face instantly turning red and swollen. Dante, we loved each other so much, she cried, tears streaming down her face. How could you just let it go? We promised we'd be together forever. How can you leave me? Dante, I'm begging you, come back to me. Let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please. Evelyn stepped in front of him, shielding him from Isolde, her expression as cold as ice. Ms. Du Bois, if you're here to congratulate us, you're welcome. If you're here to ruin this ceremony, you'll find I can be very unpleasant. Dante turned his head and looked past Evelyn, his gaze falling on the pathetic woman kneeling on the floor. He said one word, his voice devoid of all emotion. Get out. Isolde froze, unable to accept the brutal reality of the situation. Overcome with regret, she buried her face in her hands, continuing to kneel as she watched him slide the ring on Evelyn Chen's finger. Dante, I just want to talk to you, please. Isolde begged, her voice now quiet and broken. Please don't be so cruel. The guests were already whispering amongst themselves. Dante heard snippets of their conversations, some calling him a social climber, others speculating about the drama. He didn't care about his own reputation, but he would not let anyone tarnish Evelyn's. He would not let the woman who had loved him for over a decade be subjected to this kind of gossip. He let out a cold, humorless laugh. What do you want to talk about, Isolde? Do you want to talk about how you rejected my proposal in front of all our friends? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. Or maybe we should talk about how you were in a private club, making out with some boy toy? Or perhaps, Dante continued, his voice dropping lower, we could discuss how you badmouthed me to your friends? How you called me used goods that you were bored with? Isolde was speechless. She had done all those things. Dante, I was wrong, she sobbed. Please forgive me, just this once. Please, I love you. Dante squeezed Evelyn's hand, his expression calm, but the force of his grip betrayed the rage boiling beneath the surface. Evelyn, who was already furious at Isolde's appearance, let her inner alpha CO loose. Ms. Du Bois, she began, her voice sharp and cutting. Today is my engagement party. For you to cause a scene like this is a grave insult to the Chin family. Evelyn took a step forward. I have loved Dante for 13 years. Back in college, I was a step too late. I saw that you two were together, so I quietly bowed out. Her eyes narrowed. But did you cherish him? You cheated on him. You grew tired of him. You slandered him behind your back. What do you take him for? A toy? You took the man I have loved for 13 years, and you treated him like garbage. The only reason your company isn't bankrupt right now is because I've shown restraint. If you continue to make a scene, I suggest you consider what the full force of my family's influence can do. Evelyn's words were laced with possessiveness and aggression, and Dante loved it. To be valued like this, to be protected, it was a warmth he had never known. Isolde knelt there, her face a ghostly white. She knew in that moment that she had truly and irrevocably lost the man who had always loved her, the man who had been with her since they were just kids. She whispered one last, broken, I'm sorry. Then, like a ghost, she got up and walked away. Back in Austin, Isolde sold everything. She sold her company, her properties, her cars, everything except the one house they had shared. Following her lawyer's advice, she transferred all of his shares back to Dante. With what remained, she established an educational foundation for underprivileged students, leaving herself with just enough to live on. She threw herself into her work, working with a frantic, desperate energy, as if it were the only thing that could numb the pain. She was determined to live out her days alone, a true penance for her sins. At the foundation's inaugural ceremony, her face was placid, her eyes empty of any light. She stood at the podium looking out at the sea of young, hopeful students. When she spoke, her voice was flat and hollow. I hope, she said, that you never betray a true heart, because someone who betrays a true heart deserves neither love nor happiness.